Welcome, everybody, to Everlasting Veteran. I am your host, Ryan Landry, coming to you from the Everlasting Veteran studio. I have a wonderful guest, Doug
Oh, you're too kind.
Capazzi.
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 Yes.
It's
Yeah.
Italian.
It's an Italian.
Italian.
But with the New England accent, everyone always says Capazzi.
Capazzi.
Yep.
Yeah. So I just learned that I'm like 98% Irish.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I did that 23andMe, and it's just I have a little bit of West African, Libyan, and stuff in there, but like it's like through the roof. I mean, like my origins, I knew my origins, my Irish roots were like running deep in my blood, but
you just never realized how much.
I didn't realize how much, right? It was crazy, absolutely crazy. I found out that apparently none of my family members took 23andMe, so I have no family either.
Really?
So we'll see once they do that. They took Ancestry. I wish they blended the two, But anyways, so Guardians of the Purple Heart.
Yes, sir.
How has that journey been? Before we get into that, just think about it. It's been a long road.
Yeah.
Ups and downs, twists and turns.
It's been rough.
And everything like that. Let's dive a little bit into your time in service.
Okay.
Where'd you serve? What branch you served with? How was that experience? And what happened? Deployment wise and all that kind of stuff.
So, excuse me. I served in the Army from 98 to 2007. So yes, I am old.
Old.
I was deployed twice to Iraq, once in 2003 and then again in 2005 to 2006. I specialized as a lightweight vehicle mechanic and then cross-trained as a vehicle recovery to kind of mix the two. Figured if I'm fixing them, might as well just go ahead and tow them out of places anyways. And then right before the second deployment, we're at the MOB station and my commander comes up and he's like, "Hey, guess what? You're now going to be a combat lifesaver." And I'm like, no, no, people don't come with manuals. I don't do it.
Right.
So he was like, "No, we need it. It's a requirement." So then I cross-trained as a combat lifesaver. So when I got to Iraq the second time, they were like, "Hey, grab your toolbox, grab your combat lifesaver bag and go." I was like, "Oh no, this is not good." So it was, I like to say I was triple tasked because when I was going on convoys missions, whether it be in a Black Hawk or Chinook or whatever, they were like, "All right, so you're the combat lifesaver of the mission." And I'm like, "Yeah, I guess so." So then it was, "All right, well, help the medics out." I mean, in the end, we're all medics at the end of the day,
right?
But at the same time, it was the next level
next level
medic.
Yeah, not necessarily House of Learning doctors, but good Step Brothers reference there.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's a testament to in the military, people don't realize like you can sign up and this is your job. This is AIT, whatever your specialized training you go to.
Yep.
But then there's the needs of a deployment, the needs of an organization.
Exactly.
And there can be a full 180 shift to what you do, or there could just be something added on to what you already do.
Yeah.
And the level of responsibility continues to grow, especially as you move up through the ranks and everything like that. How was deployments for you and stuff?
For lack of better terms, they sucked. But then again, deployments are deployments, right? I learned really quick that you couldn't look at a deployment like 18 months, 12 months, anything like that. You had to look at it in a 24-hour time period.
Right.
Then I broke that 24 hours into, say, 18 hours. Because I figured, if anything, I do have anywhere between 4 to 6 hours every day to wash myself, eat,
human essentials.
Yeah, to do the basic necessities.
Right.
But I always tell people I only had 3 things to worry about when I was deployed. It was eating when I could, sleeping when I could, and waking up the next day. Every morning I wake up, I was like, all right, item number 1 checked off my list, time to complete the other 2.
Right.
And then I broke it up by meals. Lunchtime, day was already half over. Dinner, when I could eat dinner, half the time it was, knee deep in an engine bay and just slamming cheeseburgers from the chow hall down your throat, or, having your buddy heat up an MRE for you and you're just eating on the go. But at the same time, it was still dinner. And I was like, well, night's almost over, so going to be going to bed in a couple of hours. And then just lather, rinse, repeat every single day.
Yeah.
So
yeah, the beauties of the MREs, sometimes you got the peanut butter spread
Which is your favorite? Which is the great debate?
It's tough because it depends on, obviously you trade and barter,
Yep.
right? Based on what you have, what somebody else has, because not everything in there is the best, right? And then they came out with like a chocolate like spread.
Yep.
And they had the cheese spread.
Oh, the jalapeno cheese was
the
best.
jalapeno cheese is probably the best. The bread, not so much. It was like cardboard.
Yeah, but it filled you up though.
It filled you up, and you didn't have to use the restroom for at least 48 hours.
Well, I mean, that was good during some missions when,
Yeah, it's true. I mean, that's the effects of, because your body is, sustaining on such a high calorie intake.
Yep.
And then when you supply it with what it needs and you're still on the move, your body's already processing that down.
Yeah.
That's all designed for the MREs, right? Yeah. But I would say the jalapeno cheese spread.
Yep.
Probably the best. I would also go with, I'd venture to say that the pasta wasn't too bad. Pasta was okay. You couldn't get it that often though.
No, chili mac is my favorite. Yeah. Chili mac is hands down. Like anytime we were going on missions, I would always tell the person who was, in charge of the MREs, I'm like, make sure you grab all the chili mac ones for me. Right. And they're like, we got you. So 4 or 5 bags of chili macs just thrown in the Humvee for me. So lived off of chili mac MREs.
Yeah, that and the Rippets.
Oh,
remember the little tiny cans, right?
Road rockets.
Road rockets, right? They had nothing. 2-hour energy shots had nothing on those guys.
Oh my god.
Yeah, I mean,
you get them at the dollar store.
I know, but there was something about them, right? Because or you make those little coffee pouches, right? And you throw a lipper of a coffee pouch in. Right, to kind of keep you sustained. But those Rippets, like it's like doing a shot of energy. And then all of a sudden, like 3 hours later, you're 12 deep.
Yep.
And you feel like your heart's about to explode. And you're like, this probably isn't the best for me.
Yep.
In the moment, you don't think that.
Oh, no.
But later on down the road, you're like, I can't believe I put that in my body.
Exactly.
But the joys of definitely a different delicatessen meal and everything on deployment. You always have to have like the little, so on the vest, IOTV, whatever you had, right? Yep. Everybody had a pouch that was for the personal effects of a dip can, of a little hot sauce bottle.
Yep.
You would steal it, people don't use it in their MRE. You'd grab it from them.
Tabasco.
A little Tabasco, put on your eggs, whatever the case might be. I venture to say that it's not the same recipe that we can buy in the store right now.
No.
Because I felt like it was a little bit more peppery.
Yeah. There was a little bit more of a punch to it.
A little bit more of a punch to it. And you can't get that same flavor again. I find myself using half the bottle of Red Hot trying to
and then you mix it with sriracha just to get that little bit of
the little kick. Yeah, that little kick there. Yeah, the joys of deployment of how we make our meals is phenomenal. I kind of summed it up the other day. My wife made walking tacos for my daughter. Right.
What's a walking taco?
So you have like taco meat, right? And you take like a Doritos bag, the small ones. You pop it open, right? You crunch all the Doritos up so it's all like in little tiny pieces. You put the taco meat on inside, you put the cheese inside, you put the sour cream and a little salsa, whatever you want, and you have a walking taco in a Dorito bag. I was like, that is some stuff I would do. My daughter loves it though.
I'm gonna have to make that.
My daughter, because you just make, and you don't have, the only silverware you have is, unless you use plastic, right? You have no cleanup other than the pan that you cook the meat in.
I'm gonna have to go home and make that now.
Right?
That sounds
it was genius.
That is a fantastic idea.
I wish I thought about doing that on a deployment.
Well, I mean, you'd have to still find a place where you could get the ingredients.
You probably don't want to eat the meat over there. That was kind of one of those. It
was questionable because the days that we did get to go to the chow hall, we'd walk in and me and my buddy would be like, "Oh, what's on the menu?" And it's like surf and turf night, and you're nowhere near like the surf, and you're like, where did this stuff come from?
Right. Yeah.
We're like, we're just going to grab a box of cereal. We're all set.
Yeah, that fish has legs.
Yep. Like, where'd you get the crabs from? Never mind.
Yeah. Don't ask questions.
Exactly.
Man, good stuff. All right. So, I mean, you had your deployments, you had your time in service. How long did you serve for?
Total
Total
7 years.
7.
Or I'm sorry, 8.
8 years.
Yeah.
So, and then, obviously getting out of the military, and we talk about it all the time because it is a relevant hot topic for the veteran community. I think it will continue to be until we figure out some way to help with the transition, make it a little bit better. Right. How was that for you, kind of getting out and starting to figure out how to civilian again?
It was rough. I didn't know what to do. I always felt like I was the odd man out, felt like I was that, sore thumb sticking out of the crowd. Even when I was hanging out with friends, they'd be joking around and stuff, and you do that, ha ha ha, that's so funny. But then at the end of the day, you're just like, I don't get it. I
Right.
don't see what was so funny. And then you have that like dark humor side of things.
Oh, yeah.
And somebody will like, oh, that's, unfortunate. And then you just kind of chuckle and you're like, well, it could be worse or whatever. And they're like, well, how could it be worse?
Right.
Like, you just don't come from that same world that we come from.
Yeah.
It was tough to adjust. I just felt like I never belonged. And it wasn't until getting involved in the nonprofit community and getting involved in, doing something for somebody else is when I started to realize, like, okay, I'm not the only one kind of going through this. Cause I had a really, really rough patch. Like, I'm talking 2 steps away from becoming a statistic. And excuse me, it wasn't until somebody had called and kind of peeled back the curtain, I guess you could say,
Right.
and kind of put some light on the situation. Um, and that's when I realized, like, yeah, I'm not the only one. There's other people. I'm not the only sore thumb. I'm not the only odd man out. And that's when I was like, all right, let's take a step back and figure stuff out. And that's when 2015 is when it all changed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, we talk about, somebody reaching out or talking to somebody in that kind of light bulb of sorts, the switch changes, what were kind of the steps? Can you remember of, is it more of just taking away the negative stuff, the thoughts and avenues of approach and thinking, and is it taking away that and just being more positive and having a little bit more hope, or is there more of a continuous? Obviously, it's a continuous grind, day in and day out. But at the same time, everybody, I speak with, including myself, like, we say, the transition, do this, do that, and there's like the physical aspect of it, but then there's the mental transition aspect of it, which I think goes a little bit deeper than I think we all kind of still realize. There's not enough research, I think, that goes on of how veterans can change. And this is not just veterans, but you got like lifelong police officers, firefighters, people that see
excuse me,
kind of the underbelly dark side of the world, and that's, kind of that, I talked to somebody recently about it, we look at the world in our own way, right? And a lot of times if you see the 20% that's bad, right? If you put a percentage on it, 80% probably good, 20 bad.
Yeah.
If you're in a line of work where you're seeing that constant negative all the time, and constant infrastructure failure within a society based on what's going on, systemically, or just the culture, you're going to kind of narrow your your blinders going to be put on. You're going to narrow your mindset of like, or your thinking of how the world is, and I think it's a practical thinking in the veteran world as well, in our community, to be able to we have to start taking that step back. Right. We have to start excluding ourselves from the negative thoughts, from the negative nature of things, and be more positive. Because it's so exhausting.
It is.
Right? It's so exhausting continuing to find negative after negative, and then you're met with negative, so then you're negative, and then it's mentally and physically exhausting.
Yeah. Yep. But here's the thing, though. We as humans, we are prone to just focus on the negative, because that's, again, we see a lot of it in our daily lives. So immediately what we're going to do is we're going to find the negative in everything, right? So the way that we can kind of get out of that is to change the narrative. And this is how I was able to kind of go from almost becoming a statistic to, I don't want to say acting like I don't have a care in the world, but completely changing everything for myself, is because I needed to change the narrative up here.
Right.
And I did. And it's how we perceive everything. So rather than saying like, I have to go to work, or I have to do this, I have to do that, I say I have to mow the yard, right? That's a chore. It's
Right.
part of summertime, right? You have to do it. But rather than saying like, I have to go to work, say I get to go to work. Because now we're focusing, excuse me, more on the positive side of things and saying, I have that opportunity to get up, go to work, and make a living, provide for my family. And then once we start changing that narrative and changing how we speak to ourselves, then we can start changing how we view everything else. Right. When it comes to stress, I always ask, anyone who comes to me with stress, I'm like, can you control what you're stressing about? And they're like, no. And why are we stressing about it then?
Yeah.
That's time and energy that you're taking away from yourself that you can put into something else.
Yep.
And then again, they're like, oh, I didn't see it that way. So perception is everything at this point.
Right. Yeah. And I think, and that goes along the lines, like I use and I put out, people to have the mindset of, use the Control Alt Delete method, right?
Yeah.
Control yourself and what you can control, and, alter your mindset and delete the negativity.
Exactly.
And I think it works really well, especially to kind of relate to as a veteran, as a military, whatever, if you got acronyms in your life, like, Control Alt Delete, like in those abbreviations, we're so used to them.
Yep.
And it feels comfortable, but it's a positive comfortable, right? And I think that's where, we get so used to, especially in the military, that high-end leadership, that high-end camaraderie. It's like no other. And then when you get out, you're kind of faced with a letdown, and it's not our letdown, right? It's the civilian side of things. Most of the time, don't have the leadership training in which is instilled in the military, which you can't 100% fault people for,
Right.
but at the same time, coming from an environment and then transitioning into that environment, we have to be more mindful to be able to say, this is what I'm going to be expecting, right? Because I think what happens a lot of times is we have, I'm getting out, I'm growing a beard, I'm doing this, you know what I mean? And that's like your focus, right? And you're going to go to a job and they're going to see, the skills and, everything in which you learned in the military, and you're going to hit the ground running, and you're going to be a rock star day one. They don't know you from Adam, right? And, any Adams watching this show, I'm not talking about you, but they don't know you. They don't know you at all. And I think that a better education on both fronts. I don't think just veterans transitioning, but I also think a better communicative approach to, hey, civilian world, people that haven't served, this is what you're going to be getting. This is what to expect, and vice versa, right? And then also adapt some of the training. And I had L. David Marquette on here. He wrote the book, Turn the Ship Around.
Yep.
And he goes around the country and he talks about, implementing that stuff and to now organizations on the civilian side.
Yep.
Perfect, right? But it's a commander coming out of the military with these leadership skills. And so often than not, you have so many civilian sector jobs that this is how I've always done it. We're not changing our ways, and they put the blinders on, right?
Oh, yeah.
And we're guilty of it. And we recognize it because we've done it, right? And it's like, okay, you don't want to listen to me? What else do you want me to do?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And it's not an arrogance thing at all. It's just like we're trying to put some positive input. And I think you should probably give your veterans a little bit more credit. Now, mind you, PSA, all right, we're not all built the same.
No.
Okay. So don't expect you're going to get the exact same veteran walking through that door every single time. We're still human.
Yeah.
However, if you take a deep dive into, the military time in which they served and what they've done and everything else, you're going to be able to find out, is it a good candidate for your company or not, you know? And you still work on base now.
Yes. Yes.
And when did you, so you got out like 2015-ish?
No, I got out in 2007. And then
2007.
So from 2007 to roughly, it was January of 2018. So for about 10, 11 years, I was.
Did I just make that year up? What was 2015?
So. That was the year I got involved with the nonprofits. So you do remember stuff.
That is. I do remember stuff. It was squirrel.
So for about 10, 11 years, I was trying to find my way, and I was trying to figure out where I fit.
Right.
Everything, it was like I felt like I was wasting away. Felt like I just wasn't really putting my skills to good use.
Right.
So I was doing nuclear security up at Millstone or Dominion, whatever you want to call it, or whatever they're naming it this month.
Right.
And I applied for a job for, I think it was in 2017, I applied for a job as working with the homeless veteran population out in New London. Went to the interview. They were very impressed with what I was doing because I was still with the nonprofit and stuff. And they're like, all right, where'd you get your degree? Like, what do you mean? You can't like teach this. It's just people skills. And he's like, well, there's no way that you could be doing this without a degree, especially in the nonprofit world. And I'm like, you can. It's just how you talk to people, right? Relationship building. So he's like, all right, cool, we'll call you. And I knew that was the end all be all, thanks, but no thanks. Got the email a couple of days later that said, hey, sorry, we're going to go with a different candidate. I got really, really mad because it was, why do I need a piece of paper to show that I can talk to people and build relationships and networks and stuff like that? Right. So it was like one of those epic hold my beer moments. I looked at my phone. I was like, fine, you want a degree? I'll give you a degree. Contacted Voc Rehab, went and got everything approved, turned around, quit my job, doing nuclear security, and went to college full time in 2018. Finished my degree in 3 years, nonstop for 3 years, college.
I remember that period.
Yep. I was grinding away for 3 years, like sacrificing time with my kid. I was out at his baseball games. I had my laptop set up on the bleachers, psychology books out, and I'm like, typing away. And he hits. I'm like, yeah, go, buddy.
The human brain.
So December of 21, I finished my degree, or finished all my requirements like 2 weeks early. Couldn't sleep, because that's not uncommon in the veteran community where you just can't sleep. And I just happened to be, it was either Monster or Indeed, and I see this posting for a job on Subbase for education services facilitator. And they're like, you have to be able to teach people. You have to be able to, build relationships with different commands and stuff. And I'm like, well, check, got all that. And they're like, you need a psychology degree. Got that. So I applied, and they hired me in February of 2022 to be their life skills educator, which I thought was kind of humorous because when they offered me the job, I'm like, you are going to offer the guy the job that finds SpongeBob absolutely hilarious and will sit there and watch episodes of The Office on repeat like it's the first time I've seen him. And then I realized you have to bring in the Army to teach the Navy how to live life. And that just was comical. I called myself an overpaid camp counselor for the Navy because that's pretty much what it was. And then just recently, like a month ago, I don't know if you would call it a promotion, but I call it a promotion. So now I'm what's called is an exceptional family member program case liaison. So I work with families who have like intellectual, medical disability, stuff like that. And we make sure as a case liaison that they're getting the care and the resources they need in the community. And when they go to PCS or transfer to another station.
Oh, nice. Nice. And, with that, I mean, obviously, your tone of how you're talking about it changed, right? In the conversation, so I feel like, am I venturing off to say that you've kind of found a little bit more purpose in what you're doing now?
I'm still fairly, very, very new. So I am the boot, between me and another case liaison. But when you peel back the layers of the onions, I'm a problem solver. So my son knows that he can come to me with like one of the most complex problems. And not only my son, but other people will say, hey, we have to figure this out. And I can kind of dissect everything in my head and then put all the pieces back together and come up with a contingency plan. And this is what it is. It's families coming with, problems and saying, hey, how do we navigate this situation?
Yep.
And it's like, okay, bring in the life skills background. This is how we're going to de-stress. This is how we're going to, I can't even say that word, compartmentalize. Words are hard.
Words.
I don't like to, read big words, nor can I say them.
Yep.
But yeah, so I bring in the life skills aspect and I help them solve problems and I help them navigate, certain situations. So I like it because I get in at 7:30 and next thing you know, I'm like, oh, I gotta go home. And they don't pay me overtime.
Right.
So the day goes by quick. But it is just like doing the nonprofit work. There are some moments that kind of tug on your heartstrings. So you do come home like emotionally drained, which is something that I have to get used to.
Right.
It's a noble calling to join the armed forces and defend our freedoms. It's a testament to the determination and love freedom requires to care for your family while your spouse is deployed. It's a profound honor to uphold the legacy of those who have made the ultimate sacrifice. It's inspiring to choose to support veteran-owned businesses. It's rewarding to give of your time and resources to veteran service organizations. Together, we can lift our veterans and show them our heartfelt gratitude. They've given us so much. Let's give back with all the support and appreciation they deserve.
Doing it for work and then getting out and then doing the nonprofit stuff kind of almost full time. It's, I need that moment. I need the Doug moment to kind of decompress.
Right.
So
yeah, and I'm glad you said it like that because I mean there are times where like, where, like I'm like Ryan Landry the veteran, Ryan Landry, and then there's like Ryan, right?
Yeah.
Or Ryan Landry the podcaster, Ryan Landry the police officer, and then but in all of that, like I try to stay true to who I am during all that because I want people to know Ryan, not the label in which what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying? And I think it's a mindset thing to be able to take that, bring that to the table and what you're doing, because what you're doing is not who you are, right?
Yeah.
And kind of having that separation in your daily activities of what you do and who you interact with and everything, it becomes a very important thing, when you're trying to connect with people, when you're trying to help in their lives and stuff like that. So, I'm glad you said that because, a lot of people, need to hear that, like, okay, what's your purpose, not your job, right? Your job has a purpose, what is your purpose as Doug, as Ryan, who are you? What's your identity,
Yeah.
And those are big things in which, we struggle with getting out of the military, creating that identity, reintroducing ourselves into the world and saying, this is who I am.
Yeah. It's like, it's almost kind of like finding and reinventing yourself too at that point. It's because when you're in the military, it's like they tell you what to eat, when to eat, what to wear, like your entire
where to
life,
stand.
and how to stand, don't move. So when you kind of like reinvent yourself, it's like this really euphoric, eye-opening moment. And you are correct. It's like I go to work and I'm case liaison Doug, and then I get out of work. But even in still work, I'm CEO of Guardians Doug. Get out of work, I'm dad, fiance Doug, all this other stuff.
Right.
So, but the one thing that anybody will tell you is that there is no deviation from my authenticity. Right. One of the things that I love is just how I can kind of go from one situation to the next, still be professional, but then turn around, add that little bit of a sarcastic tone to it.
Yep.
And then just still laugh and have a good time because that's who I am.
Right.
So,
yeah. And I think, in laughing and having a good time and being sarcastic and stuff like that, I think, a lot of times we get caught up as human beings in kind of the everyday life of, hearing sarcasm from somebody or whatever the case may be. It gets miscued, taken the wrong way,
one too many times,
and then it's like, screw this dude, like do whatever. And, you know, I do think that conversation and being able to kind of say, okay, this is me, this is my lane, this is you in your lane. You know, I'm just not 100% like the perfect speaker. Right.
Yeah.
And I'm going to say something that in here, it was really funny. And when it came out, it didn't come out so funny.
Crickets.
You know, and it's like, you sit there and you go, okay, I'm still a good comedian because it made me laugh. Right. You know, and I think people have to kind of realize that, you know, especially in the veteran community, right? We have a different way of interacting, especially when we're meeting new people in the veteran community, because there's a different bond that you had with the people you serve with. You're there 24/7 with them, right? So you know how people operate and tick. You know where to press the button, when not to press the button, you know, and stuff like that. So I think as a community, you know, we need to kind of take a step back and be like, hey, listen, the jokes that you played with the unit that you're with, people may not be picking up what you're putting down.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think we can do a better job of just being aware of that and just being like, okay, like you say your humor, I say my humor, and it's going to land wherever it lands. We can still be friends, you know, but at the same time, like, because that was one thing when I initially got out, all the like inside jokes and stuff like that, especially after deployment. And, you know, I would tell a story, nobody would get it. Nobody would get what the hell I'm talking about. Right. And I would sit there like I'm telling this boring, mundane story. But to me, like I lived it. Right. And to me, it was funny. It was screwed up. It was whatever. And people just couldn't connect. Right. And so I think there's that aspect. We get it when we get out too, is there's a disconnect of how we operate, you know, as veterans trying to civilian. You know, and I think we'll maybe forever have that a little bit, but we can adapt a little bit more and blend kind of into a different identity of who we are. And it's kind of like meeting new friends, you know, and that whole boring, mundane conversation of how people interact with each other, you know, and then you build up and you have your inside jokes, whatever. It's the same concept though. Right. But so you got out, you did that, you transitioned, you know, and CEO of Guardians of the Purple Heart.
Never thought I'd be here.
So before we kind of dive into the growth of it, you know, kind of when you got into it and everything, what was that like for you? What did it mean to you, getting involved?
So I started out as just general volunteer. At the time, it was called the Purple Heart Poker Run Incorporated. And it was one event. It was a motorcycle run. It was to raise money to donate. Well, at first it was donating to the Wounded Warrior Project. Then the founder of the motorcycle run took a step back, came back a year later and was like, he was a Purple Heart recipient. So he's like, I want to give back to my demographic. Excuse me. That was the year I met him, was in 2015. That's when he approached me, met him through my sister-in-law, and he was like, hey, I'm Army. Immediately, we kind of clicked. And then we were talking about it. I was like, yeah, just hit me up when you get stuff off the ground. September, October that year, calls me up. Hey, we're getting ready for the 2016 event. Do you want to get involved? I was like, sure. At the time, I was still trying to find my way. I was still trying to figure out where I fit. And then I figured, well, this dude's Army. He's giving back to, you know, combat wounded vets. So this should be good for me. Right. So we'll kind of dip my toes in the water and see what happens. 2016 rolls around. We do the event. And then 2 weeks after, he calls me up and he's like, yo, I want to take this organization to the next level, but I can't do it alone. I'm like, all right, so what are you asking? And he goes, do you want to take over as president? And I was like, dude, I'm having a hard enough time running my own life, let alone an organization. Right. Like I can't command myself to do stuff. How do you expect me to boss people around? So he's like, look, we'll do it together. He's like, if the Army ever taught us anything, it's just adapt and overcome. And I'm like, yeah, you got a point. And I'm like, but at this point, what do we have to lose? Right. We can say we tried everything. And then if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. So I took over, realized real quick that the name, the Purple Heart Poker Run Incorporated doesn't work in New England, because if you go to do an event in December that's associated with a motorcycle run, you get a lot of eyebrows that are like, boy, it's colder than hell outside. Like,
yeah,
you want me to break my motorcycle out in the wintertime? Are you stupid?
right.
So we came back to the drawing board, and then I was like, look, we need to change the name. There was a little bit of pushback, and I get it, but I was like, let's just try it out and see what happens. If we're going to go anywhere, we need a name change. We need to rebrand with a different logo, and we need to do more than just one event a year. And he was like, all right, whatever, just do your thing. You're running this show. So I was like, okay. We implemented a name change. It took us about 2 hours to come up with the name, because someone was like, we're kind of like the guardian angels of the Purple Heart. And I'm like, that's a mouthful. I'm not running with it.
Right.
So then somebody was like, what about Guardians of the Purple Heart? And we're like, done. We did Google search, Instagram, Facebook, all the platforms. We did all the things, and then no one popped up. So we're like, nab it. So we changed the name right away. Our first logo was more left and right. That worked good for pens and maybe the back of your shirt from shoulder blade to shoulder blade.
Right.
So then we redesigned the logo. We had someone redesign it for us. And I remember the exact day where we were when we chose the logo. It was in Mohegan Sun, down in their conference room right before a Black Wolves lacrosse game. And it was January of 2018 is when we adopted this logo. And that just became our identity at that point.
Nice. Nice. Yeah. And we were just talking about, somebody saw the shirt you're wearing right now.
Yeah.
And then what's got PH mean? Yeah, you guys can see that got PH. Well, you could go off of that, right? And like those got milk shirts,
Yeah.
right? You got Purple Heart.
Yeah.
Right. So I mean, maybe they give you good inspiration for some other clothing and stuff.
If anything, it's a great conversation starter,
right?
Because people will come up and they're like, hey, what does got PH mean? And I'm like, it's not got P. I'm like, oh, okay. Here's what it is. And then I go into like the 30-second elevator pitch. And then that's where like we hook them. That's where we hook the people. And they're like, man, that is amazing. I've never heard of an organization doing that. And it kind of hurts, because then it's like, okay, so we're not doing enough marketing, but we can't be doing any more marketing at this point. Cause I mean, we're all over the things too, Facebook, Instagram, not really covering TikTok too much because I really don't understand it, and I'm not doing any dances for anybody.
Yeah,
I dance and I look like a full body dry heat.
Well, they're planning on banning it in the U.S. anyways.
Yeah,
so
we'll see what happens with
that. I mean, that's one of the things with like business, and people have to understand, like, whether for profit or a nonprofit, it's still business. Like it's how things are filed. It's the structure of it's a little bit different.
Yep.
But you still, you have your meetings, and you have your board and stuff like that, and so there's a little bit more in depth of coordination for multiple different people versus like, myself, like I'm really good at talking to myself. I have a board meeting once a day.
I have about 6 board meetings once a day.
Call to action in my head. Everybody's staying at attention.
How's that round table look?
Yeah, it's interesting.
Okay.
I really got to talk with my assistant about beverages,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's treated. It's a business, right? You have to have structure. You have to have stuff, implemented guidelines, everything else. People need to know their roles, their parts, and there's a lot more that goes into like nonprofit work than people really realize.
Oh, it is a fickle, fickle
and then
beast.
you go to plan an event, right? Especially if it's like a big event for the year.
Yeah.
How much time and effort goes into planning it for a 4-hour period, right? And it's like months of planning.
Yeah.
4 hours goes by and you go, all right, let's take a 2-week break and start planning next year's, or hit the ground running on the next one, And
we don't even do that. So our poker run that we do is kind of like our Super Bowl. That's our main event. And that's where we bring in probably anywhere between like 70-80% of our proceeds for the year. And it takes us, we plan it all year. From poker run to poker run, we're throwing ideas, we're throwing the what ifs and the hypotheticals.
And that's the June 8th
event. Yes. Yeah. We start at Mike's Famous Harley Davidson in New London. We have 4 stops, and then we end over at, I think we're ending at the Basra Moose Lodge this year. again, which has been tradition for us for the past couple of years, for the last
Gotcha.
8 years. But yeah, we plan it every single day. There's always stuff being talked about when it comes to the poker run. And that's, we start at 7 in the morning, we end at 7 at night that day. And then when stuff is back in the storage unit or everyone's back in their driveways, they're like, all right, so we have this event coming up in a month. Let's start, putting the finishing touches on that. So
Right.
it never ends. And now with the podcast too that we have, which is Cover Down, make sure you
Cover
go
Down.
and follow.
Yep.
That's a Guardians of the Purple Heart production, and it's between events. It's also planning studio time. It's guests and content creation and scripts and all that stuff, which is another full-time job.
Oh yeah.
Which, as you know,
I know.
You kind of just slap this thing together, which looks good though. No, I'm kidding.
Many board meetings, many board meetings right up here.
Your board meetings have paid off. Buddy.
Yeah, there's many times. I'm not kidding. Before anything was over here, I mean, I had items, personal items, right?
Yep.
It was just personalism. And you go, I haven't touched that since I put it there, and that's been 8 years. Okay. Trash.
Yep.
And then you quickly realize again, like how much you really need. And, but before I even put the first stud up in the studio, I sat here in a chair. It'd be like an hour, some days, maybe 30 minutes, whatever. And I'd just start picturing and envisioning, the final product. Right. And then as I'm building it, obviously some things change here and there, but the vision, that vivid vision that I had of what it is now is the vision that I had when I sat in that chair and had that board meeting with myself in an empty space.
Yep.
And, it was a great journey.
Mm-hmm.
I also had another veteran here to help, and it occupied his time and everything else. And there was more to just helping, right? Through conversation and, everything else, like we both grew together, in those months of building the studio, not just knowledge of building stuff. We knew how to build stuff pretty well, just growing together on our own personal fronts at the same time, because we had that like almost 24/7 communication going on, where you kind of got that camaraderie back.
Yep.
Right. And, I wanted to add that into the space, and I have like a little Easter egg hidden under the floor over here. We all sign the floor.
Oh, that's awesome.
Me, my wife, my daughter, Matt, myself, we signed the floor, put some Everlasting Veteran stickers down. So it's going to forever be under the floor over there for the entrance into the studio here. Mm-hmm. And it was just a great growth period, right? And you got to have those, it may not be a continuous, like crazy growth as you go, but like sometimes you got to have a project focus, kind of like planning for events or whatever the case may be. And you really take a deep dive into, you start learning more about the people you're talking with, right? And then also you learn a little bit more about yourself too, and you get perspective, and that's, you don't have to be a veteran to like get stuff out of people, get perspective from people. That's why I don't have just veterans on this podcast. It's been a journey. It's been an amazing journey, and I absolutely love where it's come from and where I'm at now. And 2024 I got some big things coming for 2024.
Yeah, I can't wait to see.
Stand by for that, because I'm not putting it out right now.
Yep.
There's some integral workings. Is that even a word? I don't know. We make up words here. But it is a journey, just like what you guys are going through with Guardians of Purple Heart and other organizations. But the biggest thing for all of us, right, myself included, is to not lose focus on why we started, right? Why we started what we did, because once we start losing that focus, however big you get, you kind of start losing that connection on a personal level, right? And, if you can't regain that connection, find a way. Right? If you can't find a way, then maybe it's time to go in a different direction.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Because you don't want to drive it into the ground. You don't want to drive it to the point where, people are just like, this isn't what you said you started for.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And as things grow and, and stuff for me. Like, I just want to have fun doing it.
Yeah.
You know, that's the biggest thing is like, this has kind of been my release
Yeah.
of my normal daily activities, where this has now become my normal daily
Yeah.
activity. You know, so anybody that's listening or watching, adapt into your life.
Yeah.
Positive things,
Exactly.
and positive will come.
Find what brings the excitement. I mean, we do the same thing in the organization. And like we've heard plenty of times, like we don't just have veterans in our organization. We have,
Right.
you know, civilians, we have family members, stuff like that. And it's like you said, it's the excitement piece, right? It's everything that we do. We find a reason to get excited about it.
Right.
It's a lot of hard work. It is a lot of stress and frustration at the end of the day. But when we get there, we have a good time, and we know that when we're doing it, we are putting the word out there that we're here to help combat wounded veterans with whatever that they need in Connecticut and Rhode Island. And that's the thing, like, and that's really why I became CEO, is because we were just in Connecticut, and then I was like, we need to cross state lines. We need to be in more states. So I had Coast Guard veteran who was part of the organization move up to Rhode Island. And then he took a step back and was like, there's nothing like this up here for veterans.
Yeah.
So he's like, I want to open up a Rhode Island chapter. He went through all the hard work, and I'm like, all right, go ahead. If you can manage it, let's do it. So then I went from president to CEO, excuse me. And now I get to do things on 2 levels, because it's not just Connecticut. Now it's Rhode Island as well. And it's just that excitement piece where, excuse me, I'm getting tangled up in your cord over here.
You're never leaving.
Help, I'm stuck.
The plan the whole time.
My plan is working.
Yes.
So yeah, it's like I get to see the events that Connecticut is doing, and then I get to see the events that Rhode Island is doing.
Right.
And then it's double the excitement, everything. And then to see everyone else's excitement on top of that, it's just, I take a step back. I'm like, you know what? Today was a very stressful day, but I love it.
Yeah.
I wouldn't trade it for the world. So the only way that I will stop doing this is if for whatever reason we have to stop the organization, and that's it. I will fight tooth and nail. Like we fought tooth and nail through COVID. Try being a nonprofit who raises money on events by bringing people together.
Right.
During a time where you can't come together.
During a time where you couldn't even blow out your birthday candles.
Exactly.
You know,
right.
like,
so how do you remain sustainable at that
can't even
point?
celebrate your birth. Right.
Exactly.
The government was telling us, do not blow your birthday candles out.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Like,
and then it became what? Someone singing happy birthday became triggering or whatever. I think it was like a year later, in the news, it was like, you can't sing happy birthday because it could be triggering.
Yeah.
For what?
Unicorns and dinosaurs were going.
Dinosaurs didn't exist.
They did. They went grocery shopping. They did. I saw them.
No,
I saw
dinosaurs didn't exist.
They did. They had.
I have this whole argument with
this inflatable dinosaur, and they went grocery shopping.
No.
Yes, it happened.
Dinosaurs. I mean, it might have happened, but dinosaurs never existed back in the time period that they said they existed.
What, COVID?
No,
because I saw them during COVID.
When Seth sees this episode, he's going to bring that up on the show, because I just constantly mess with him when he's just like, how is it that you have a bachelor's of science and you want to sit here and argue with me that dinosaurs didn't exist? And I'm like, because they didn't.
I think that's a full episode debate.
Yeah,
we could totally dive into that.
We could.
Let's
round. Do it.
Not today.
Oh no, we'll do a round 2.
Yeah, we got to do a round 2, kind of a little bit of research.
Yeah, I did my research. They didn't exist.
Okay.
There's my research.
So you guys get involved with the Mystic Irish Parade, obviously. That's
Sunday.
Yeah. And so May 25th, May 31st, and June 8th. June 8th is the poker run. May 31st, Hometown Heroes. The 25th
is CT modified, so it's a local car club.
Okay.
They're teaming up with another local car club, and they're putting on this huge car show at the Mansfield Drive-In Theater.
Nice.
And it's kind of like Fast and Furious on steroids.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of awesome cars or trucks that show up, motorcycles. They have a couple of, like events or games and stuff that children can play and stuff. But yeah, we'll be set up over there. And then 31st is a Hometown Heroes game over at Mohegan. That's their superhero night, as they're coining it, will be set up on the concourse. And then June 8th is our poker run, our main event. And then the one that I'm really excited for, I'm excited for the poker run, but I'm also excited because last year we teamed up with the Waterford Speed Bowl. And if you remember, we did a lap around the track on our motorcycles. We get to do it again on July 3rd this year.
Oh, very nice.
We will be set up July 3rd, Waterford Speed Bowl. We'll be in between the grandstands selling merch, working with another person out of Massachusetts. You might have heard of him, Fubar Studios, who's track day for vets.
Okay.
We might be up there at the New Hampshire racetrack selling merch as well as one of the sponsors.
Nice.
So can't wait for that stuff.
Nice.
Love fast cars.
Yeah.
Loud cars.
Who doesn't? Who doesn't? I mean,
it's going to be great.
That's the thing. Like this past year, I went to one of the Broke events up at Dodge Stadium.
Yep.
And I know him very well, the founder of it. And I wanted to get to whatever events possible, right? And because just because like I'm a veteran podcast doesn't mean that there's veterans that don't like cars.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Yeah, you kind of, like I said, you put those blinders on of like, this is where I'm only going.
Yeah.
Then you kind of lose opportunity to be able to connect to different audiences.
Yep.
So the point is, anywhere and everywhere is pretty much where you want to be.
Yeah.
Because you never know who or how many people you're going to connect with and how you're going to connect with them. So I think it's very important, especially as far as networking goes, just getting out there, boots on the ground, hit it running.
It's crazy who you run into, because last year when we were over at the Speed Bowl, there was someone who saw us set up, researched the organization through the website, went to the About Us page and saw my name, looked at it, sent my mom a text message and was like, is this your son? He's the CEO of this organization, or he's running this organization? She's like, yeah, he's been doing it for, since 2015. Then 3 weeks ago, when they had the bridal expo up at Mohegan Sun, I happened to be just walking through with my fiance and, doing my fiance duties and whatnot, holding bags and stuff. This guy comes up to me and he's like, remember me? Or no, first he goes, I was wearing this. And I didn't say anything. He's like, thank you for what you do. I'm like, are you talking to me? And he's like, Guardians of the Purple Heart, thank you for what you do. I really appreciate it. And I'm like, well, thank you. I appreciate that, sir. But if you don't mind me asking, who are you? And how do you know us? So he's like, you don't remember me, do you? I'm like, no. He goes, and he said his name. And then it registered. And he was like, I messaged your mom last year when I saw you guys over at the Speed Bowl. When my dad passed, there's something that happened over in Ledyard, and they live on Long Cove Road. And we had to call in the police. And this officer came in, was helping my grandma. And it was that officer that helped years and years and years and years ago. And we were at a racing event. And then he just happened to be at the bridal expo as I was looking at limousines. And it just like this whole connection, like you never know who you're going to run into.
Yeah.
You never know who you're going to, who's going to remember you and stuff just by networking or being set up at some random event.
Right. Absolutely. So I do have to say that my brain just connected the waves. I thought Guardians of the Purple Heart were set up at a bridal expo.
No, we weren't set up at the bridal expo.
Yeah, I know. I just got that.
Okay.
I thought
you were gonna be like,
I thought you guys were there like with the tent and stuff. And Guardians, you were there with your fiance.
Yeah.
I had a board meeting. We figured it out. But I'm serious. My thought was, I'm like, what were they doing at a bridal expo?
I mean, you never
I'm like,
know.
We just talked about going everywhere and being anywhere and everywhere. And I'm like, oh, I never thought about doing that. Okay, good for you guys.
Yeah.
And
you never know. We never thought that we would be mixed in with some of the demographics that we're mixed in with now.
Yeah.
Right. We never thought we would be sponsoring a little league team. And that idea came from my son. He was like, I was taking him and his best friend to a practice or a game. And he's like, hey, Dad, how cool would it be if the Guardians logo was on one of our jerseys? I'm like, that'd be pretty sick, dude. Let's make it happen.
Right.
just started talking to the organizers of Groton Little League, and we were able to work that. So we were showing up to the games, and I have a jersey. They just gave me a jersey that said Guardians across the chest with the number 1 with a team picture. So never thought we would do anything like that. But then again, I'm at Stop and Shop and I see a kid running around with a Guardian shirt, and it happens to be one of the players. I'm like, that's awesome.
Right. So, yeah. And it just kind of comes full circle of, and I talk about it, heavily now is, you can't have community without unity.
Yeah.
And, I've said it on almost every single episode now, and people are probably like, okay, we get it. We need to be unified. Right. But it's true. You can't, and I say you can't even spell the word.
Yeah.
Right. So if you want to have community, be part of the community, and have your own community, you have to be unified. You have to have unity, and however people connect with it, the people connect with things in their own way. Perfectly fine. That's how the human brain works. Not how the body works, but the brain works. Maybe the body sometimes, but that's how human nature is, to be able to connect with something. People connect with it in a different way.
Yeah.
Cars, maybe you're not a mechanic. You just like the loud sound of cars or motorcycles, whatever, or you like going fast. People connect with it differently, and I think, it also goes into who's in the household, right? How they're teaching them to be a good human, right? Like, be a good human, and that really stuck with me. I mean, I've always tried to be a good human, but it really stuck with me when I had Marty Caproni on here, comedian. Shout out to Marty. In the episode, he's like, just be a freaking good human being. That's what people need to do. Like, who cares? He's like, I don't care what you think. I'm just going to be a good human being. Why don't you do the same?
Yeah.
And ever since that episode, it's stuck with me of that's as simplistic as you can do it, right? As you can put it. Just be a good human being.
Why make it complicated?
Right.
There's no need.
Yeah.
People think that life is complicated, and I get it, right? There's certain aspects that we can't navigate that make it complicated. But when we peel back the layers of the onion, life is easy.
Yeah.
Just be a good human.
Yeah.
And don't care about what other people think.
Yep.
I don't.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's, I mean, you got to care to a certain extent, right? Like,
to a certain degree.
Certain degree. Obviously, if you're putting out good,
Oh yeah.
And stuff like that, like, you care, for the aspect of the people in which, you're intermingling with, right? You don't care in the aspect of, like, if somebody wants to misjudge what you're doing.
Oh yeah.
But I also think that comes into play is, like, how many times do we judge a book by its cover?
Yeah.
Right. And it's human nature to do. And a lot of times we have to stop ourselves to be like, okay, I may have got that wrong.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I may have made that jump to conclusion too fast.
Yep.
Or you did it too late.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Where, like, your judgment call on, and that's the other thing, the word judgment, right? You got to eliminate that.
Yeah.
If you go through and just have your interaction and then make a calculated decision, process it, have your board meeting, right?
Yeah.
And everybody's got to have their own board meeting. Let me tell you, it's become a world different perspective on life when, I know, and sometimes the board meetings come sporadically, right? So I joke about it, but it's true. It's a self-reflection type of thing, right? And, stop placing the blame on everybody else.
Yeah.
Right. I listened to I just started listening to podcasts. Not the whole thing.
It's a noble calling to join the armed forces and defend our freedoms. It's a testament to the determination and love freedom requires to care for your family while your spouse is deployed. It's a profound honor to uphold the legacy of those who have made the ultimate sacrifice. It's inspiring to choose to support veteran-owned businesses. It's rewarding to give of your time and resources to veteran service organizations. Together, we can lift our veterans and show them our heartfelt gratitude. They've given us so much, Let's give back with all the support and appreciation they deserve.
I haven't listened to a full episode of anybody's podcast.
Oh, that hurts.
And I have a podcast.
Oh,
I want to explain. I've listened to bits and pieces of everybody's here and there, but I want to stay true to who I am and what I'm doing. Right. And I don't think I can't I do get stuff out of other people's work and everything else. I get good perspective. But unfortunately, especially, when you're like recording and going through a season, processing it, doing everything else, like sometimes I just don't have the time, because most of the time when I'm like editing stuff, they're like, well, why don't you just listen to it when you're doing the videos? Well, I have to listen to the videos I'm editing, make sure it sounds good.
Yeah.
So I can't have something else going on, and then play it on here, so I think it's more of a time thing than anything. It's not that I don't want to. Right now, it's just more of a time thing, because if I had somebody else, if I could just sit down and just talk into a mic and then walk away and then somebody else takes care of everything else.
So I shouldn't feel bad that that's how it happens with me.
Yeah.
Our podcast, it was the idea came up. I've always wanted to do a podcast. And then when Seth came in to the organization, he was like, hey, I want to start a podcast. And I'm like, all right, I'm all for it. But I have a couple of rules. One, you do all the work. I'm not taking on anything else. I don't have the bandwidth for it. I want to I want to be part of it. And he's like, yeah, cool. I was hoping you would. I want to show up. I want to talk into the mic, right? Yeah. Give me the talking points, or just tell me the topic and then I'll go from there.
Right.
And then that's going to be it. You guys are going to take care of the editing, the processing, the going through the social medias and stuff like that. And he was like, done. If this is what it's going to take for us to have a podcast, let's do it.
Yeah.
So I show up, he gives me the topic, or I have the topic before walking in the studio. We banter, we do our thing. And then afterwards, I let Nick and Seth take care of it. Shout out to Nick and Seth, who are doing a fantastic job with the editing. I think that's like the favorite part of the podcast, though, is even though I know what we're going to talk about, Seth and Nick have this really unique ability to throw in the little shorts or the little bits from videos and stuff, just to like Easter eggs, right? So you have bits of The Office or Family Guy or something in there. I don't know what's coming. And then it's just absolutely hilarious how they basically edit that all in.
Yeah.
So I feel a little bit bad that you don't have that.
Well, I think, and it's in the perspective of it, like you have a lot going on, like being the overhead of, Connecticut and Rhode Island, right? Yep. So to be able to take on the inner workings of the podcast we talked about is like, it is like a full-time job doing everything, right? I enjoy this. I enjoy doing the editing. I enjoy like all the videos, mashing it up, like, and people know, like maybe some people don't know, every single piece of content that's been put out by Everlasting Veteran has been like from this like station. You know what I mean? And it's one of those things where I take pride in it, but I probably couldn't step back as much as like you are right now, because I'm so involved with it that I love doing it, where it's like one of those things where it's like, if I give up that aspect, I feel like I'm giving up kind of like what I'm doing.
Yeah, I get that. And as much as I'd love to be involved, like I had to be able to relinquish that kind of control. Right. Anyone who runs a nonprofit knows you're not going to get anywhere by not networking and having those conversations.
Yeah.
So the podcast is, I don't want to say like my release and my time to have fun and have a good time, but it kind of is, because I love hanging out with Nick and Seth in the studio, and I love the conversations, but I also love the content. But on the organizational side of things, I love talking with these, corporations, this doing the networking side of things. Like I will network and talk to anyone that wants to, find more about our mission. And I'll be like, all right, you guys do the podcast thing. I'm going to go talk to these people.
Yeah.
So yeah, I get what you're saying about the relinquishing control part.
Yeah.
It's
not so much the control. Like I have no problem with like delegating stuff. It's just, it's something I enjoy, so like, I kind of don't want to give up that aspect. Like,
Yeah.
and if I had somebody that, like, say, if I took all these controls and they put it on the backside, you know, and somebody else is controlling stuff, it would make it easier to like have, you know, a conversation, not be switching through the cameras and all that kind of stuff, you know. But I mean, I've figured out like how I have things positioned, you know, it works for me and what I have here. You know, is this the setup that will work for everybody? No.
Yeah.
You know, but at the same time, like, it works for me. I didn't take any media classes. I didn't take, like, I learned this all on, you know, and it was one of those, the point is, it's one of those things that it pushed me, I pushed myself personally beyond my limit, right? To see what I could handle, see what I could learn, right? And I did it, you know, and you have to do that in life in general, you know, and, you know, kind of create something from nothing, you know. And it's like when a kid, like, you know, or an adult, you know, they find a passion, you know, for doing something, and then, you know, you see it grow, you know. And I've watched it with this, you know, and just being me, you know, doing it has just been a phenomenal thing.
Yeah. You do fantastic work for not having any of that training and whatnot. You do fantastic work with all of this. Like,
I mean, I try. I mean, at the same time, like, I want it to be comfortable.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I don't want you to feel like, yeah, we're sitting in a studio, but at the same time, like, I want that, like, kind of that homey feeling.
Yep.
You know what I mean? There's that little piece that goes, I can kind of relax a little bit, you know? And I wanted that not just for me, but anybody that sat down with me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because I do feel, you know, especially the amount of times that I've been, like, either interviewed on, like, the news or whatever the case may be, each time, even when I sit in this mic and this is like my comfort zone, there's that little edge of nerves, right? And it's a good thing. I like it, right? Because I'm going to be doing another thing that maybe pushes me out of the comfort zone.
Yeah.
Right. You know, and everybody knows by now, right, is I am not a structured, like, we have to follow this to a T podcast, right? I did that for the first 3 episodes. I actually wrote out exactly what I was going to say for 30 minutes.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
So I actually typed out, like, what I was actually going to say, and it was just me and a mic. I didn't have video, right? So, like, those first 3 episodes, like,
I remember that.
it came just right out of my head onto a piece of paper, but it was my thoughts flowing into what I needed to get out myself.
Yeah.
What I thought others may also be thinking, you know, and may be able to connect with, you know. And I came out with that first episode, What the Vet. And, you know, that was like kind of the turning point for me of, I never really was that public speaker. I was always kind of the behind the scenes, you know, get things done. I didn't really ever want, like, limelight. I'm still kind of that way, you know, but I have a podcast. I have, like, a social platform where I have to be in front of stuff sometimes. Is it still uncomfortable? Yeah, it's still uncomfortable sometimes, but I enjoy it.
Yeah.
You know, and the day that it doesn't become uncomfortable just a little bit, I think it's going to be the day that I say, okay, I have to stop, you know, because I know that at that point I'm not pushing myself, and, you know, I haven't created enough goals to achieve, and you kind of plateau, you know? So, I mean, the whole point of it is not just podcasting, but in life in general, right? You know, you go to work, or you go to, you know, you're in the military, and this is the biggest thing with, like, the transition out, right? We have so many goals and so many expectations to hit within the military. We know what they are.
Yep.
Now you get out, you have to create them on your own, right? And you have to put a value, not monetary wise. You have to put a value on what it means to you when you achieve that goal.
Yeah.
And I think that's the biggest point of, you know, strategically setting up yourself for success. And I don't mean success just in a monetary means, right? I mean success as far as you feeling like you have achieved stuff. That's success, right? Yeah. And I think that's part of it, as far as the, you know, multiple transitions out of the military, and getting the mindset that it's not a singular transition. You know, you have there's the physical aspect of leaving the military, the contract's done. There's the mental aspect, you know, of, okay, I'm not going back. Like, why do I keep like, you know, doing this, and this, right?
Yeah.
But there are some stuff that you should not allow to exit your life, right? The structure side of it, right? Because it's so ingrained into you. If you leave that behind, then that feeling of loss, I think, is going to come into play, right? Feeling lost, right? Because you don't have that structure.
Yep.
Right. You don't have the, and you don't have the implementation, you know, and, you know, I've said this before, like, you know, in the NCO creed, non-commissioned officer creed, you know, I will obtain the mission in the absence of my orders, right? The orders from higher ups, right? Have that board meeting, right?
Yeah.
Because the higher ups is just you now.
Yeah.
Right. You may
exactly.
may in your job have, you know, higher ups to be able to guidance on your job itself. But once the job's done, right, or when these headphones and the mic turns off, right, then it's just Ryan. It's just Doug.
Yep.
Right. We have the veteran status. That's what we've done. But where are we going? Right. And if you don't take a second to go, okay, what am I doing in 5 years? Right. What am I doing in a year? Right. Set up those goals, set up those structured stuff in your life, just like a business.
Yeah.
Right. And you knock one off at a time. And then once you get close to reaching that, what seemed unachievable at the time, right, you then set more goals that are higher.
Yeah. I think also, too, what a lot of people kind of forget, or some veterans forget, is we set those goals, but we have to show up and put in the work, because it's, you know, some of this stuff, I don't want to say is handed to us, because nothing's really handed to us in the military.
Right.
But time in grade, time in service, you know, we've seen it plenty of times where you have that not so favorable individual, part of the E4 mafia. Next thing you know, they get sergeant. And it's, well, why did they get that? Well, time in grade, time in service. You know, they met the metric. So there you go. But now it's, we have to put in the work to get what we want. Yeah. And I think that's a lot of times where people just forget, like, yeah, it's going to be uncomfortable. It might suck, right? It's not going to be unicorns and rainbows every single day. And there are going to be days where you are, you know, feeling down and out, but you got to keep chasing it. Yeah. And don't get bogged down by the demons. I had somebody ask me, and a couple of months ago, they were like, what do you do with the, you know, the demons living inside your head? And I'm like, nothing. I welcome them.
They have a board meeting with them.
Exactly. You know? And they looked at me and they were like, I don't understand. Like, why don't you try to get rid of them? Like, why would I? They were there for me when nobody else was. Right. It was the board meeting. I would sit there and talk to them. I'd talk to myself. So it's like familiarity to me, right? Again, perspective. Right. I accept it. They're there. They're never going away. I can try to silence them every once in a while, but we all know they're going to speak up during a board meeting. Right.
Yeah. And I mean, it's one of those things too, that, you know, people have to realize that, you know, when you have this goal and you have to put the work in, right? Yep. You have to have this matrix of sorts going on, right? Not the crazy hot matrix, right? But a true, you know, matrix of sorts. This is my goal. And then it should be followed by hard work. What is the hard work that you need to do? If you don't know, then you need to educate yourself on what you need to do to attain that goal. So often than not, I think what happens is we have that goal. We know we need to put the hard work in, but we don't know how to. We know how to put hard work in. But we don't know what the work is. Yeah, you know. And I think, you know, continuing to educate yourself, that's growth.
Oh yeah,
right,
definitely.
And if you remove that, where nobody can teach me anything, right? I'm at this level, you're at this level, I can't learn from you. Having that mentality of not a leader type of thing, kind of how L. David Marquette talks about in his book, right? And having that onus on, you know, people can learn from others no matter what the level is at, right? Yep. Of time of grain, time of service, whatever, right? Putting it on that kind of perspective, right? But you have that leader mentality, right? And no matter who you talk to or what you do, you're going to learn something. Exactly. Right? And you could take one little piece, put it in your toolbox, right? Put it up to the board meeting and let them decide on what's going on, right?
Put it in the docket as new business.
Yeah, new business. You know, and then really sit down. And this is the key. We joke about it, having a board meeting, whatever, but it's true. This is how you decompartmentalize.
There's that word,
right? What's going on? I don't even know if I said it correctly.
I don't know, but it sounded better than me.
It was good effort. Good effort. But it's true. You have to strategically plan and formulate a care package of sorts for yourself, right? Of saying, okay, if it's VA stuff, if it's, you know, mental health stuff, it's the personal fitness, whatever case may be, some of those aspects affect you getting to this point.
Yep.
Then you have to work on a little bit of this, right? Everything affects getting to that goal, right?
Yeah.
Proper sleep. I know better than, you know, everybody else. No, that's not the way you want to think, right? I know what I know, right? And I worked nights for 10 and a half years, you know, and like my sleep was crap.
Yeah.
Right. And sleep is the biggest thing for your brain to be able to break everything down, be able to process it. That's the biggest thing. You process it, then you formulate a plan to move forward, you know, and you create that structure, strategic plan, but you have to process it first in order to understand what plan needs to move forward.
Yeah.
You know, and if you don't take those steps, you know, and along the way, you add that control alt delete thing to it. You have to control yourself, alter your mindset, and delete the negativity.
Yep.
Right. And people go, well, what are you talking about? Well, control yourself means just to control yourself. You can't control what you can't control. Control your emotions, control what's in your world, control what, you know, and alter your mindset of stop being negative. I can't do it. You know, the bullshit. You can do it.
Yeah.
Right. Is it going to be hard work? Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, because you're stepping out of your comfort zone.
Right. The most knowledge you're going to gain is when you step into a world that is uncomfortable. Right. When you become uncomfortable, it means that you are stepping into something you don't know. Right. A conversation, a job, or whatever the case may be. Through that, you will grow. You will be better off than you were if you decided not to interject yourself into that.
Yep.
That's it.
Yeah. And if you're comfortable, you're never going to.
That's it. We figured out life.
Yeah, exactly.
We figured it out.
There you go.
We figured it out.
See what happens?
Yeah.
That's the meaning of life.
That's the meaning of life. We just had a board meeting.
Control alt delete.
Control alt delete. You know, but I put in that perspective, and I didn't make that up, right? I picked that up along the way, but I attached myself to it, how I put it in my life, right? And how I simply put it is, you know, something's not working, right, in your computer system. What do? Control alt delete. You go to the processes, right, and you see what's
taking the most CPU usage right there, and you're like, done.
Yeah, done. You delete that negativity.
Exactly.
Right? Because you're not able to move forward.
Slowing you down,
right? That's the simplest way I could put it, is how I connected with it immediately.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, anybody else, and there's some other people I've talked to, and you know, they're like, oh, that's awesome. I think I'm going to think about doing that, and you know, everything else. Maybe you don't, you know, like maybe there's like something else that I say that I wouldn't even think, right, that you connect with, you know, and you can put that into your life. Or, you know, you send me an email and you're like, hey man, I heard what you said. This is what's worked for me, you know, and then I get that perspective and maybe be able to change something to positively move forward in my life, you know. And that's why I love what I do now, is that interaction, even at afar.
Yeah.
You know, and that connection, that building a connection, not just in the veteran community, but the community in general, you know, across the United States, you know, into Canada and Australia now. And, you know, I've had many conversations with other people from other countries of how, you know, their veteran population is going through stuff and everything else. And we're more open to be able to have these conversations like this. Right. And, you know, it's not a matter of like they're behind the times. It's just a different culture. Right. Their culture is set up. Is it wrong? I can't say yes or no. Right. But what they do doesn't work for me. Right. And, you know, maybe vice versa, you know, whatever the case may be. And eventually, maybe at some point, I'll have one of them on to be able to say, and we can get that perspective. I already have the perspective because I talked to them, but I would love for them to come on.
Yeah.
but they're weary of it because that's not their culture.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So, but just having that perspective of, okay, everything's not as freaking crap as we think it is all the time, you know, and we're our own worst enemies a lot of the time. You know, and we beat ourselves up, I think, too much, right? You do something, give yourself freaking credit for it.
Yeah.
Right. You don't need a pat on the back from somebody else, but that dopamine dump that you get, that feeling of feeling good when you complete a task, right? Go, I've done it before, right? You sit there and I would do like a mashup of video and I'll be like, yes. All right. Good job. And just, you know, I've done it physically, right?
Yep.
But you can do it mentally of like, give yourself credit, you know, for your accomplishments, because sometimes, or most of the time, you may not have, like, you're not going to have, this is the reality of it, 24/7, you're not going to have somebody, hey, Doug, hey,
good job, buddy. Good job.
Good job today. Good job today. Right.
Yeah.
You know, and like for me, I mean, just getting through a day of not having like an intense coughing fit or an episode or whatever, you know, based on my breathing, you know, my breathing condition that I just got diagnosed with, you know, like small pillars of like rewarding yourself for like, you know, pushing yourself, but also being stable at the same time.
Yep.
You know, and I think that's the key to it, of continuing to grow and build your success personally. And then you can adapt as you grow personally. It will affect you professionally, and so on. It has that trickle up effect.
Yeah, it's actually called an upward spiral.
Yeah,
because what happens is we get into what's called an emotional whirlpool. So you a fan of, or you've obviously seen Austin Powers, right?
Right.
Remember the one with Fat Bastard in it?
Right.
There's a scene in there where he asks him, "Why are you so fat?" And then he says, "I eat because I'm unhappy, and I'm unhappy because I eat." So that's what's called an emotional whirlpools. We get sucked into that. Now what happens is eventually over time, the emotional whirlpool goes like this, and then it starts to level off. And then we get sucked into a downward spiral. And that's where we get put in that metaphorical rabbit hole where, like, I'm done, I'm out, you know, I might as well just sit here in the dark. The negative self-talk is what brings us there. It's that positive self-talk that's going to create that upward spiral, which is then going to kind of venture out kind of like a tornado.
Yep.
And then that's where everything is going to start changing. You're going to start seeing things from a different perspective again, right? Oh, if I spent, you know, 5 minutes learning this stuff, I'd be 5 minutes wiser into editing videos and audio and stuff like that. Now, what happens if I spend 10 minutes doing it, right? Stepping outside of your comfort zone and realizing that even 5 minutes is 5 minutes more effort than you put in yesterday.
Right.
Give yourself credit for it.
Yeah. And I think it's one of those things. It's really important. You know, not just with like, you know, a downward spiral, upward spiral, but, you know, being able to sit there and recognize that, hey, I need to make some changes.
Yeah.
You know, recognition, you know, of, you know, what's working, what's not working, is going to be a huge key to changing your mindset. Right. Because we can sit here all day long and go, oh, this dude, that dude, whatever. Okay. We are sitting here spinning our wheels. Right. And just, you know, if it's bad mouthing somebody or bad mouthing a business or talking negative, and that's that downward force, right? You look for the negative.
Exactly.
Right? And you know, people with social media, right? You click on something, right? Or whatever you're aligned with of what you want to believe, right? If you want to be ignorant to like learning of what others think, right? You know, it's like right now the big hot topic, like Republican, Democrat, right? You know, there's no like in between anymore.
Yeah.
You know, there's no like, you have to be this way, you have to be that. And it's like, oh my God, can you stop? Like, you're giving me a headache, you know, because I mean, you can learn more by doing your own research, you know, and Dr. Lynette Nersbacher put it simply, and this is not just the United States, right? This has happened in the UK. Like, if people don't know what who Dr. Lynette Nersbacher is, she is the a co-host of sorts. She sits on Mysteries of the Abandoned on the History Channel, the redhead, and And so she came on for the first episode for the season 4. And, she put in perspective for like the UK, like how political stuff are there. Like it's very, very similar, right? Where if you don't pick up a newspaper that, pushes one agenda and you don't go and pick up the newspaper that pushes the other agenda, you're not going to get perspective and make your own formulated decision on what's going on actually present, right? Yeah. Social media is one of those things where now with the algorithms and everything else, you click on one thing and you start clicking on that. That's all you're going to start to see.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's why I say to people like social media, or Bobby Boucher's mom put it, the best.
Bobby
Boucher. Social media is the devil.
There's something wrong with your medulla oblongata.
No, Colonel Sanders.
That's a great movie.
Great movie. But it's true though, is like if you go down that rabbit hole of certain content, that's all you're going to start to see. Right. And I mean, don't click on it if it's negative. Like PSA. Right.
Yep.
If you're trying to move yourself in a positive forward direction, just stay away from it.
Yeah, exactly. Just start doing,
or maybe watch it or read it or whatever the case may be, and you get that perspective of like, nope, that's not what I think anymore. Right. But don't allow it to consume you.
Yeah.
Right. That's the biggest thing, is allowing outside factors to control you as a person and what you do in your daily activities and how you communicate with others.
Yeah.
That's basically it boiled down.
Yeah.
Right. And that's when you have to control yourself and alter your mindset. Right.
Yeah.
And that's what we talk about, we just talked about. And it's hard sometimes as humans. I'm at fault for it. Like you get in this whirlwind of sorts, and then you hit that, that breaking point, not breaking point, but you hit that point where you go, this is exhausting.
Yeah.
Right. This is why. And then all of a sudden you have that board meeting again, and you say, okay, let's move back into the direction. You realign yourself, your compass, starts going.
Yeah, we all get off course every once in a while. I mean, I even get off course too. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, we're human. It's within our nature. It's going to happen.
Yeah. Right.
And it's just kind of being able to take a step back and reel yourself in and doing a personal checkup from the neck up and going, okay, I need to pull my head out of my, like, this is not who I am. And it's just admitting it and admitting fault to it. We all go there. We all get there at some point, but it's just making sure that you just stay true to who you are at that point.
Right. All right, guys. I appreciate you jumping on for an episode. Make sure you go check out Guardians of the Purple Heart. They're doing great things, and it started Southeastern Connecticut, moved through Connecticut, and into Rhode Island now. They are strategically placing themselves to really help the community, not just Purple Heart recipients, but the veteran community, youth programs, stuff like that, and trying to build a community around what they have going on. And if we don't work together, then we don't have a community. So make sure you go check them out. I appreciate you.
I appreciate you, buddy. Thank you.
And your buddy Seth will be here, and we'll talk about dinosaurs.
Tell him. Just be like, I talked to Doug about dinosaurs, or just actually don't tell him you talked to me about it.
I'm just going to see the comparison, of
just tell him dinosaurs. Just be like, what are your thoughts? I don't believe that they're real.
Yeah.
Just
throw it in there.
Just throw it in there.
Yeah. All right, guys. If you want to go and support Everlasting Veteran, you can go to everlastingveteran.com. You can go check out swag apparel, become a weekly supporter. I appreciate everybody thus far helping Everlasting grow with the community and be part of the community. You guys are amazing, and having Guardians of the Purple Heart here in studios. And I can't wait for the dinosaur conversation with Seth.
It's going to be a good time.
All right,
you're welcome in advance for that.
Yeah. All right, guys. This is your host, Ryan Landry, with Everlasting Veteran Podcast.